Welcome back to RotoQL University. This is our Advanced DFS Lineup Strategy course. Today we'll be looking at Advanced Bankroll Management. I'm Mike and I have Sahil here with me as well.
How you doing, Mike?
Pretty good, Sahil. Let's get into the lesson overview. First, we're going to look at profitability and what that looks like for different types of players. And then we'll dive into both cash game and GPP bankroll management, how you can, if you're a cash game player, what bankroll management looks like from that spectrum, but also if you're willing to be riskier with your bankroll and looking at GPPs, how you can allocate using that strategy. And then from there, we'll get into mitigating variance, tracking wins and losses, and finally dealing with losing streaks.
All right, so profitability, that's everybody's goal, but it can be pretty difficult to achieve. So one thing you need to do is understand what your win percentage needs to be at various levels and different game types to kind of figure out where you're going to be profitable. So you can look at this, head-to-heads are one of the most commons, and this will kind of correspond with 50-50s too, since if you are completely even with your opponent, you expect to be 50%, both in 50-50s obviously and head-to-heads. The problem with being 50% is with the site fees, you're going to lose around 10% on a $10 head-to-head, which generally pays out $18. So as you go up your win percentage, you're going to lose less and less, and once you reach the tipping point, which is around 55.5%, you're going to turn to be profitable. So what does this mean? It means that you should really try to figure out where you fall on the spectrum. It's not reasonable to expect anything higher than 60%, and there's very, very few people who are going to even be above 58-60%. So what you're looking at is ROIs in the $10 head-to-heads. If you're good, it's going to be between 0 and 5%. So as you go into DFS bankroll strategy, one thing that's important is to understand what your goals are. Playing DFS as a source of income is very, very difficult to do. You have to have the time, the know-how, and the kind of ability to withstand some losses. If you only want to have to deposit once, which is I think a lot of people's goals, is just to play for fun, keep that as a good hobby. And then there's the last class where you're really not caring too much about how much you win or lose, but you're just really trying to enjoy yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. So when you're playing DFS as a source of income, I would definitely not recommend using more than 8% of your bankroll per night. And that's also going to be diversified through different lineups, different sites, etc. If you're going to have to deposit only once, I think, and that requires you to be somewhat close to a break-even player, I think around 5 to 10% is pretty reasonable. And if you're doing it just for fun and games, you should kind of do whatever you're comfortable with, and maybe that is going all in against someone named Sahil Sood. Could be a good idea or not. So going back to what we discussed on a previous slide is we want to really focus on using a percentage of your bankroll each night or each day rather than a fixed amount. Playing a fixed percentage of your bankroll allows you to deal with losing streaks by slightly just lowering your actual dollar amount in play, and after a winning streak will allow you to slowly grow. So 10% a night, as you can see here, you'll kind of have a more gradual decline. This is, you never want to go through a 25-day losing streak, but if you do, playing a fixed percentage of the night, you'll be able to withstand that somewhat better than if you play $100 a night, 10 straight losing days, you're done. And 10 straight may seem like a lot of losing days, but if you play DFS long enough, even I've had 10-day losing streaks. So cash versus GPP is a very interesting dynamic because head-to-heads are obviously less volatile, and you'll get more diverse opponents. You'll be able to gain a smaller percentage of your bankroll if you're a top player. So your ROI on GPPs, if you are a very good player, is most likely going to be higher than they are in head-to-heads. So you have the riskier, more volatile option that can give you an ROI over the head-to-heads or 50s, which could allow you to grow your bankroll more steadily or keep it flat if that's one of your goals. So here, the key takeaway is that you obviously want to be risking more in head-to-heads than you would in GPPs. So if you're going to be playing GPPs exclusively, I wouldn't ever risk more than 3 or 4% of your bankroll on a given GPP night. Whereas head-to-heads, I think you could go a little bit higher, maybe 8% if you're focusing exclusively on that. So game selection will really allow you to mitigate your variance. And here's a strategy from the football guys where they say if you're going to put into play 10% of your $1,000 bankroll, this is an allocation that might make sense. And while I do think 10% is a little bit high, some of the ideas here are interesting. So they are suggesting that you spend 90% of your in-play amount on head-to-heads and 50-50s or cash games, and the remaining 10% on GPPs. I think this is a type of strategy that is probably more suited to a person that plays for fun or wants to never deposit again, because it really doesn't focus on what the player is best at. So kind of allowing head-to-head and 50-50s will allow you to kind of not go through too much variance, and a little bit of GPPs, maybe a little bit of fun. These actual dollar amounts, $1 $5, $5 $2, that's not necessary to kind of have a strict amount like that. I think it's more important that you get a more diverse set of opponents, whether that is 13 $5 head-to-heads, 5 $5 50-50s, and put in 5 $2 entries in the GPP. Whatever you think makes sense to you. There's no hard and fast rules, and you're going to probably have similar ROIs on all those entry fee amounts when you're playing less than $10. Another way that you can mitigate variance is through lineup construction. And this kind of goes to building multiple lineups, which you can do both in cash games and in tournaments. In tournaments, you want to make sure you have different teams, whereas cash games, it's not as crucial. So here we clearly like the Colorado players, but out of our 20 lineups, we're not going to have a single player on more than 75% of our teams. So you can really adjust this exposure percentage to kind of match your risk tolerance and what your goals are. So if you want to go down to make the max player exposure to 50%, that will really limit some of your upside, but will limit your downswings. And if your goal is just to have a sweat every night and kind of break even, then it might make sense to kind of keep that max out at 50%, with the rare exceptions. Tracking your wins and losses is very important, and I think this is probably the biggest thing that you can learn about bankroll management is figure out where you're most profitable and least profitable. So you can download your results from both DraftKings and FanDuel and kind of figure out where are you winning money, where are you losing money. Because there's always going to be places where you're winning and there's always going to be places where you're losing. So are you exceeding at GPPs? Are you exceeding in cash games that are below $10 against a variety of opponents? Are triple ups, quintuple ups? Whatever you're figuring out is your most profitable, that's where you should really focus on and try to cut out those places where you're losing money. So that type of advice is obviously very important for pros and even for people that are trying to slowly grow their bankroll. Playing GPPs may be a source of losing money and maybe a little bit fun. So if you're going to play that, keep in mind that you should keep a small percentage of bankroll on GPPs if you're losing money there. And you keep focusing on your higher profitability. That is the most important thing and will allow you to both grow your bankroll and limit your downswings and losses. Losing streaks, we've all been through them. I've been through them, and they're always tough. So what you really need to figure out is what are the causes of your losing streaks and how can you react. So are your expectations realistic? Is your losing streak just kind of what your expectation is? Did you start out hot and all of a sudden go through a long losing streak and wondered what changed? Well, maybe you just got lucky in the beginning. So that happens to a lot of people, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. So you need to go back and understand what your expectations are and dial back. As we talked about before, if you go through a losing streak, you should definitely lower the amount you play. And if it makes sense and you're really struggling, take a break. DFS will be here when you get back. Then go back to game selection, as we talked about before. Are you losing a lot of money on qualifiers or big GPPs? Cut those out of your game selection until you get back to winning. Then maybe you can revisit them. Is it issues with a certain sport? Are you really good at baseball and then want to start basketball? If you want to play for fun, play basketball, but make sure you cut down your bankroll amount in play each day. And then, do you have the time to improve? Are you going to be able to improve your DFS skills and kind of reduce your losing streaks? Are your picks bad? Are you struggling? Can you improve? All those questions you got to think about. And for a lot of people, you may not have time. You may not be able to improve as much as you would like because you have other obligations. So then this is another place where you should cut down the amount that you risk and make sure that your bankroll is something that you can afford to lose.